popping up. Is this set to where? There we go. Thank you. Several new folks. While we're doing this, if you are new, I want to make sure that you are aware of all the email subscriptions that you need to be a part of. And Yolanda, if you can, is there anything we can drop in the chat for the new folks to make sure that they're on all the email lists that they need to be?
Yes, I can put my email in and they can just send them to me.
And also, if you're new, and Yolanda, I need to get with you as I was on the road yesterday. We also need to make sure the new folks know how to get into the EMFTS.
Okay. I'll add that info in the chat as well.
Thank you. All right, we can jump back. You guys keep posting as we continue on. All right, we'll start off with the EOI recap. We've already put up the Jamboard, but the link is there if you didn't get a chance to post your thoughts on the plus and delta, so we can move on to the next slide. All right, so EOI successes. I've heard from everybody, and I agree the one-day cushion was great to have in place. It allowed us to ensure that all the pre-EOI tasks were completed before we had you guys sitting there waiting to process EOI. But that is definitely something that we're going to look to do again next year. Hopefully we'll be able to do that depending on the calendar. So if we've got schools that are ending late July or at the end of July, we'll have to work around those schedules. So hopefully I'll be able to know soon based off of the calendar end dates. The EPV reports, those were a huge help this year. There are some changes that we're going to make to the EPV reports so that they're more aligned with the validation report that's actually on the EOI process page. So we'll look at making those before we get to EOI next year. Another thing we did was have, I call it hand-holding sessions, but it was very beneficial meetings with PowerSchool throughout the night. So rather than just going off of a task list, which is what we do every year, it's just like we pass the baton back and forth. We had more meetings throughout the day and throughout the night with the team players on the PowerSchool side, so that before we moved on, we were able to talk about each task and make sure, yeah, it's checked off, but are we sure that process completed? So that was beneficial. the earlier start time for PSU processing. So by adding that 1-day cushion, we were able to enable the EOY button early in the morning so that by the time you guys got up and ready to process it, it was already enabled. PowerSchool process changes to improve timing of syncing of standards. That was something that was tested on the PowerSchool side, and it proved to be successful. I think Wake County finished in about 6 hours, and that was from start to finish. That was a huge change from previous years. Next slide. So on our side, the hiccups that you guys didn't really experience, SAS availability. So after PowerSchool finished up, we finished up. SAS has some tasks that they're assigned to, and we found out the task list wasn't really moving and no check boxes were being checked. We found out that some of the SAS team was actually out for the 4th of July. So had we have had everybody in place, we truly think that EOY could have, or PowerSchool could have been turned back over on July 4th. Now I say that we wouldn't have given it back on July 4th, knowing that you guys are out and you don't want your teachers getting in before you get in, but that's how early we could have had it done. So next year, for sure, we're thinking the 5th is when we're going to be able to hand it back over. Lori on the DPI side, she's met with SAS, and we know that that problem won't happen again moving forward. The GDV early grad script to move all of those students, the wrong script was executed. I think we found out that last year's script was executed instead of the one that we provided this year. However, we wanted to make sure that that was fixed before we turned it back over to you guys so that you weren't responsible for cleaning up our error. So we resolved that. Course title changes. This is something we've been getting some emails, like some folks are sending in tickets and emails, and then others are fixing it themselves because they're used to doing this. But there were some course title changes, mostly CTE. Those changes were made in Enterprise Controller. So now if you go to pull in any of those courses brand new, you're going to see the new titles. However, it did not sync down if you already had those courses in place. So like I said, we've got some districts that have been manually changing those, and that's fine. But Lorenzo's with us, and I think you were going to look for a script, Lorenzo. Did we find that?
Yeah, I sent you a message just a little bit before this meeting. Yeah, we can talk about it separately, but I think we've got an option.
Okay. So for now, if you guys want to go in and change those manually, there weren't many changes this year. So you can go ahead and do that, or you can wait and let Lorenzo and I talk and see what we can do to fix that for you. Something else, and we went back and forth on this item for years. I think several years back, we were told to turn off like auto comms and all the scheduled jobs. It's not required, but I think this year we saw that there were several pauses throughout the process, and it was because these random jobs were kicking off. So I think moving forward, we will put in the manual and advise you guys just to turn off any scheduled jobs during the EOI process, just to help speed everything up. But basically, that's pretty much all the hiccups on our end. We've heard nothing but good things from the field, so that's a plus. All right, next slide. All right, so the transfer student records process, we've talked about this several times. We have something in play. Well, it's not in production yet, but we're working on it, and Lorenzo he's going to demo it, and we're going to kind of share with you what we ran into and when to expect this to be in place. But hopefully this is going to cut down on the loss of records. So Lorenzo, do you have the ability to share?
Let me see if it's gonna let me. I think I do. Well,
And while you're doing that, what was the final error that we ran up against? Tessa, do you remember?
Sorry, what was the question?
The transfer student records, I know it failed QA right before we went to put it in production.
Yes,
Do we,
still
what was that?
still being QA'd.
Okay.
I don't know the specifics on it. The QA team had put that in. I'd asked for the update earlier.
I know at one point it was because we were having issues on DPI 7 with the transfers.
I need to make a change to my screen resolution.
Okay.
This will just take a second. All right. Everybody able to see this okay?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So what this process is designed for, just for those of you that are new or may not be familiar with what this is an alert that will let users know if a student record has been transferred from one PSU to another. Right now, we've got this inside of our testing environment. And what this is, there's a little icon that's going to appear, right above the student name, right above the ribbon here. And it's going to look like a folder with a little arrow pointing down, kind of like a download icon. And there's 3 different colors. I'm going to talk about what each of those colors means and how that relates in the process. So when the color is green, that means you don't have to worry about anything. That means the student record has been transferred, or it's a new student and there's no records to transfer. So the green is good. The green is good. I'm going to talk about how the link actually works on here in just well, but generally speaking, if the color is green, I can hover over this and I can say, the student record process has completed successfully, so there's no further action that needs to be done. Now, if we move into a server where the student has just recently enrolled, and we're working with this Mickey Mouse user, you'll notice that the color is yellow. That's something that you should be alerted to, like, okay, something needs to be done here. So I'm going to hover over this and I'm going to say, okay, well, student record process has not been executed on this student. I've enrolled this student into school here on this server, but I haven't actually transferred their student record over. I can still go and go to the transfer student record process just like I have always done in the past. But if your user role gives you the ability to access this screen, you can actually just click on this icon and it should take you directly to that transfer student record screen. Okay, so I have a validation error on here, but what I should be able to do here is to be able to transfer that student record in. So I've got a validation error here. I guess this is the problem with doing things live sometimes. But what happens is if you go to that screen and you click on the transfer student record button, what this will actually do is it'll actually turn red to let you know that it's actually in the process. I'm going to see if I can go and do this in a different way. So I'm going to click on this transfer student record button here. Okay, and let's go back. So now you can see here that icon is red, saying that, either the process has failed or it's currently in process. As we know, when you transfer the student record, it usually takes about a minute or 2 in order to actually process, generally speaking, most times. And after a certain period of time, the student record will transfer in, and that record icon will then turn green. It'll look just like this icon here to let you know that that process has completed successfully. So as Justin and Tessa have mentioned, we still have some testing, some little bugs that we need to work out. But generally speaking, that's the process, that's the flow, and that's what those colors mean. So green means the process has transferred successfully. You don't need to do anything. Yellow means you've just enrolled this student. You need to actually initiate that transfer student record process. And red means either there's a problem and you need to try again, or you just clicked on the button to transfer the student records and it hasn't actually gone through that process yet. So that's what those three icons mean. That's what it looks like, and everything else remains the same. There's really no change to the student record transfer process itself from the back end. It's just a matter of just letting the users know that the process hasn't been initiated yet, or that there may be a problem.
Lorenzo, didn't we make some slight changes when you go to pull in new students? As far as a landing page or something?
Oh, we haven't done that part yet.
Okay. So that's coming. And then I can't remember if you put in here, do you have that stored search that we were going to push out to identify record or transfer status?
Right. I don't know if that stored search is here. Let me just take a look here. NCDPI record transfer failures and transfer not started. Right. So yeah, that's a good call out, Justin. So yeah, we have put in a place where we can actually create stored searches on the server for you to help you find students. So if you do have students that maybe have failures or the process hasn't been started, you can go right into the stored searches from the start page. So that's going to be right here inside of stored searches, and anything that that DPI has created for you to use is it's gonna start with NCDPI. We did that for purposes. One is to show you that these are stored searches that were created by DPI, and two, this is to prevent naming conflicts with stored searches that you may have created. So I can click on run search right here to find students that have failures. So I click on that right there, and you can see I've got one student with a record transfer failure. And that goes right back to my my Mickey Mouse student that I was previously in. So that of course signifies the red icon. And going back into stored searches, I can go and do the transfer process not started. I don't have any students that have an outstanding status where they actually need to run, but that would pull up a selection of students where you have not initiated that process. So that is something that is also going to be part of this push to allow that stored searches. And right now, it's going to be just used for the student record transfer process, but you can look for potentially other stored searches being added in the future as well to assist your users in finding groups of students based on a certain set of criteria.
All right. And along with this, we also, I forget the PMR error or warning, but we've added an exception to the PMR so that it'll flag if you have records that have not successfully been transferred in. All right, what questions do we have around this?
It looks like there's been some Q&A.
Let me scroll back up. We have a few. Will we be able to query for the transfer alert for those that have not transferred in yet, i.e. search for red icons? And I think you just went over that, right, Lorenzo?
Yeah, that's right. That's using the stored search mechanism. And that one question in particular, those have not transferred in yet. So looking for the red icons, so the red icons is going to be your transfer failures. The students that you haven't initiated the process at all is going to be your transfer not started.
And those stored searches are going to be pushed down. They're not in your instance yet, but we plan to push those out when we push this to production, right?
That's
Lorenzo?
correct. Yep. You're more than welcome to create your own, but we'll have that as a standard set for all PSUs to use.
What about out-of-state students who move here? There would be nothing to transfer.
Yeah, and like you said, that's going to be taken into account. So if there is nothing to transfer, those students should have just a green flag.
Will the NCDPI stored search be available at both PSU and school level?
I believe it's going to be able to be used at both. We'll have to check that just to be sure.
Well, you're in Bladen High School right now, QA.
Yes, I am. So actually, let me just move into. Yeah, so it is here at the PSU level as well.
Yep.
How is the icon applied initially? When this process is enabled, will students already enrolled and not transferred have the icon, or does it just happen upon initial enrollment? And is this a searchable field, or will there be a sequel that can be run to show all those pending? And will this impact PMR in any way?
Yeah, lots of good questions. So Justin mentioned that there is going to be an exception on the PMR for students. I'm not sure exactly what the status is. It's probably the red flags and the yellow flags that would show as an exception on the PMR. Then yes, you can write sequels against the field. There is a field that is going to be holding this data. You can, of course, again, use the stored searches that will be applied to your instances to find those students. And what was the other part of the question, Tessa?
The initiation of, will this
Yeah,
apply to current
initially.
students?
When is it just going to be for new enrollments, or will it apply to students that are currently enrolled already?
Yeah, so I think we decided that students that are currently enrolled already, I think they're going to have a yellow flag. Or maybe, you know what? I don't have a student that I can pull up on here in front of everybody to check that, but I believe we decided that current students won't be affected. Like they'll have an
Yeah.
icon, but it's going to be in a status that it shows you don't need to do anything. Just because there's so much, variation for different situations that are out there for students that already exist. And this is really kind of like a going forward kind of thing. So we're not going to like retroactively go back and try and determine if there's students that need to have the process run. It's more, you've enrolled the student now, and so it's going to apply that yellow flag to them. So once that flag has turned yellow, that's when kind of the life cycle starts. It goes from yellow to red to green.
Are the PMR related issues warnings or fatals? I think it's going to be both depending on the status. If the button has not been pressed at all, I believe that's going to be a fatal. But if the button has been pressed and it has a yellow flag or I can't remember what the other status was, or it's green, well, green would be no, but I think if it's yellow, it's a warning. But I think I don't know that the PMR part is past Q&A. I think they're still working on that.
And I may have to follow up on that. We went back and forth because we didn't want folks to not be able to submit the PMR. Let me check on that. It may be, Tessa, that we decided to make them all warnings. I'll have to ask LaShawn.
Yeah, that might actually be true. Because usually when we push new stuff out, we like to make them warnings just to give a little leeway. Is there an estimated time when the new transfer record feature will be deployed to PowerSchool instances? When it passes QA, we were hoping to have it out already, but we've got a few things to work out before we can push it out to production.
We definitely want this in place early August. And this is on the top of our priority list.
Will this feature prevent students from being transferred out of school if their record has not been transferred in successfully?
Yes. Yeah, that was actually a big point, because something that we have seen in the past is where a district will have the student and have a whole bunch of records for the student. Then the student will move to another PSU. And that PSU would not transfer in their records. So there's maybe an incomplete set of records there. And maybe it's because they were a no-show. It's still important for that button to be pressed, because when that student then goes and moves to the third PSU, we need all of those records from the first PSU to transfer to that third one. Even though the one in the middle may have been a no-show, it's still important for all of the records to be there. So yes, we are preventing the withdrawal if that transfer has not been completed successfully.
Is there a way to run this process for students in math? No.
No. No, that process still remains unchanged. This is just an alerting mechanism. It doesn't make any changes to the actual process functionality.
Will the flag be applied to student records that are enrolled using the re-enrolled process? That is a very good question,
A
Lorenzo.
re-enroll will not change the flag at this point, but that's a good question.
We probably need to take a look at that too.
Yeah, that's a good good call out.
So for students we've enrolled since EOI until the process is turned on, who haven't had records transferred yet, they won't have a yellow or red icon. So wouldn't be a PMR issue. Yes, that's correct. I think, Lorenzo, did we decide they're just going to have a green? The previous students will have a green icon?
I believe so. Yeah, I was gonna check, but I can't while I'm sharing my screen.
Right. Are the PMR warnings errors totally different than the previous PMR warnings regarding R2, R3, and the missing E1 record? Yes. It will be a specific warning for the transfer student records. If the scheduling setup page not being cleared out first stops the transfer record from happening, is there a way a student can't be transferred out if the scheduling setup page hasn't been cleared? There is not that option at this time. I wonder if we could look at, Lorenzo, making that part of the transfer out process. You know how it automatically drops students? It should clear the scheduling setup screen too.
I like that.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Because I know that's always an issue. A lot of people forget about that. And then it stops them from pulling in the records.
Yeah, we'll check that back. Let's look at that, Lorenzo. Is that all the questions on that?
Yep, that's all the questions on transfer student record process that we have.
Existing
Alright.
students, pre-existing students do have the green icon.
Okay. Thanks for confirming.
Yep.
All right, if we can put the slide deck back up, please. All right, thank you, Lorenzo.
Yep, you're welcome.
And as we get close to pushing that out to production, we'll communicate. We'll communicate out when we plan on doing that. So should be soon, hopefully. All right, just a few updates, reminders around beginning of the year. The FERPA fields were cleared out as part of the EOI process. So just a reminder, as parents, students, and parents log in, they're going to have to answer those questions again. And we've got a deadline to collect all of that by October 1st, 2022. So whatever you did last year to kind of track the completion of these fields, these questions, just keep that on your radar and know that we're going to be pulling that on the 1st of October. Next slide. Whoa, what happened here?
I don't know, but I just modified it because I just clicked on that slide and saw that it was like that. And I was like, oh, you can't read that.
Thank you. All right. So we've got a new attendance code that was pushed out this year for hospitalization homebound. I basically just went to the student accounting manual and copied and pasted what the definition of this would be, so that if there's any questions on how or when to apply that code, hopefully that statement will cover that. So if a student is confined at home or in a hospital, is unable to attend school, and is receiving homebound instruction from the homeschool LEA, they are considered hospital homebound. So that 1S would apply. So just know that's out there in production already. Other changes that we made after EOY, we made some discipline code changes. So these are new codes. So behavior codes 121, 122, those are new. New action codes for preschool. Location code, non-LEA preschool setting, that has been added. And next slide. Participant code, and this is for all types. So offender, victim, reporter, witness. You now have the school resource officer as an option. Weapon types, we've got 3 new ones. And then down at the bottom, changes to existing codes. And those were all just changed to do not use. So those last 3, you're not to use anymore. And I'm pretty sure I moved those. No, I know I did. I moved those to the bottom of the list so that they're not stuck in the middle. So you know the ones at the bottom are do not use, expired codes. Next slide. Any questions before we move on to class size?
We had one come through that said, did these go into educator's handbook? Isn't that a third-party vendor?
It is.
Yes. So you would need to check with your vendor to see if those were processed into there. We would not have pushed anything into educator handbook.
And I don't know if Amy communicates with them or not, but I'll run that by her too.
Is there a definition for 122 PD sexual activity pretext medical treatment? I would recommend reaching out to Amy Powell-Moman for that question. And I'll put her email in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's got definitions for all of those, and that may be something that we want to get from her and put in the bulletin. that it?
Yes, so far.
I don't want to spend much time going through these next few slides about class size, but I put it in here as a reminder because I do know we do have a lot of new coordinators. So just know that the fall collection is still on schedule to be due on November 30th, and that data pool is as of the 31st. Then spring, again, that's same thing, due on April 30th. Next slide.
Justin, there's a question about the 1R code. Are we still using the 1R code for COVID-related absences?
Yes, nothing has changed on that. All right, so as a reminder, and then for the new folks, what this report does is it pulls the duties of your teachers, the source of funds that's used to pay the teachers, and the number of students assigned to the class, including all exceptions in the individual class size max in kindergarten through third grade. So this is pulled, we've got the finance file that we pull at DPI. PowerSchool applies that on the back end, and then it matches up to the teacher schedules. So something else I want to point out is that finance file will not get loaded until around the 15th of, I believe it's November. Yes, if it's due at the end of November. I've got to pull the October payroll file because the data is as of October 31st. So it's usually around the 10th through the 15th of the following month before I even have access to that file. So just know while the report may open, you can go in and run it, but if you see errors around the teacher funding or teachers missing, it's because that latest payroll file has not been loaded yet. Next slide. I'm going to skim through some of these.
We have some questions.
Okay.
Do we know if data will be pulled for PEBT this school year?
Ooh, Matthew, are you on?
Yes, that has not been confirmed yet.
Do teacher social security numbers still need to be in PowerSchool for LCS?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. That's the only way we can match up for now. We've had some conversations internally with the finance folks trying to get them to start looking at UID, but the file they give us, the only way we can match is with the SSN. All I can say, and I know the teachers don't want their SSNs in there, there's a way to mask that. Lorenzo, I know we played around with it. We didn't mask that for everybody, did we? We just determined that it could be done.
Yeah, it can be done, and we're going to be taking action on students, but not teachers at this point. But that could certainly happen in the future.
So we can put out directions on how to help you guys do that locally. But right now,
maybe add that to the management role we already have.
Yeah, it certainly can be done.
Will PSUs with advanced teaching roles continue to be exempt for 22-23?
To my knowledge, yes.
And that's it for right now.
Okay. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this. It's the same information, but the details are here for anybody that's new that wants to review it. So this basically just shows what is going to be reported on the program enhancement, the enhancement report, those subject areas there. The average class size for each kindergarten through third grade. There is a change we were going to make. I can't remember if we hid this report or not. The LEA report wasn't really showing what the districts expected, but anyway, I'll let you know as we get closer what we decide on that. Next slide. Those are the reports that you're going to see as part of that collection. You got your class size, which is basically just a dump of all of your sections. even the non-reporting section. So your homerooms and lunch, whatever you have scheduled, it's just it'll be a dump of all of that information. And then your enhancement teachers, which is your arts, music, stuff like that, world languages. Class size exceptions is the one you really need to worry about, as well as the K3 class average. Your exceptions are going to show where you're over, and that's going to be where you apply your waiver, submit your waiver request. And then the K8 average class size by school. There's been some back and forth on that one, and the reason we left it in there is because we were told that the school report card data was pulling from this K8 average class size by school report. So we left that so that that's a way for you to verify that those numbers are accurate, because that's what's going to be on your school report card. However, I've got to nail down exactly what's pulled from where, because later on we were then told that a lot of the school report card data was coming from accountability. So once I know for sure what's pulling from where, I'll communicate that out to you guys. Next slide. All right, reminder, class size, that's all schools, K-12, every course, every section. Your enhancement teachers, that's again K-12. 3 and 4, those are K3 only. And then K8, again, that's for the school report card. The numbers, I just want to point out on this slide, we have reached the point to where the numbers are frozen now. They were changing every year, but it's finally to the point to where these caps are not going to change anymore. So your school exceptions, kindergarten classes over 21, first grade over 19, second grade enrollments over 20, third grade enrollments over 20. Those are the numbers. So anything over that's going to show up as an exception. And then PSU level, that's the one we need to work on. As far as your average of all sections across the PSU, your kindergarten classes can't be over 18, first grade over 16, second and third over 17. Good question that just come up. Charters, since you do not have to run this report, there's no reason for you to put in Social Security numbers. Next slide. Just went over that, so we can move on. Same thing. All right. I just want to point out again, there are special programs that need to be assigned to sections so that they are exempt, or excluded rather, from these reports. Dual language immersion is one of those. Just know back in the beginning of legislative class size, we were excluding dual language immersion based off of, I can't remember if it was the course title or something in the course code, but however, that's now been changed to where we're only looking to exclude sections that have the dual language immersion special program assigned. Next slide, the same thing for instructional pullouts. There's really no rule. Class size reports for kindergarten through third grade are to exclude sections that are considered pullouts. We don't really define pullouts, so we're leaving that up to you, because, you know, in larger districts, your pullout sections may be, well, they may have more students than they would in a smaller district. So I'm not going to tell you that a pullout's a section of 3 students only or 7 students. It's up to you. If you know it's a pullout and they're being pulled out for one-on-one instruction, then you can go in and assign that special program of NC instructional pullout. Elementary combination class. This is one of the newest special programs that we added. So class size reports for kindergarten through third grade combined section enrollment totals of sections that are being taught at the same time by the same teacher. If you've got like a 1-2 combo, then your first grade and your second grade section need to have the combination class special program assigned.
Justin, we have a couple questions.
All right.
We have a FERPA question for the FERPA fields. They were cleared during EOI and FERPA has opt out. So if parents have not logged by October and the fields are still blank, then the blank and null are considered a yes. Is that correct? I was thinking they default to no. Should I?
Lorenzo, you worked a lot on that. What?
He had to drop for another meeting.
It's an opt out. Yeah, that's the way it was. If we create it as an opt out option, and if they don't opt out, then it's left as yes.
So that's correct. It is, it says yes. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth on that, whether to call it opt in or opt out. So since it's opt out, if they don't take advantage of the opportunity to opt out, then we're assuming they're opting in.
And will social security number also be used in the eventual use of teacher infield, out of field? And if so, would all need that, including charters?
That is a real good question. So right now, that's a good point. Right now, I do think infield, out of field is looking at socials as well. We might need to pump the brakes on that and get the licensure folks to use UIDs also. Good question. I'll take that back.
What is driving the course license number information about active or no active license in the course section under certification requirements? Is it the staff's social only? Does their PS name have to match their license, or is it a non-issue ignore? Is that
Right now.
functioning correctly?
It's not. And so what you're seeing now, and I hate to say this, but what you're seeing now out there is basically what we needed in order to QA it. There was no way that we could QA infield, out of field in our QA environment. So we had to load a file in production so that our testing team could to go out and continue testing what they were working on. So right now, ignore that. As a matter of fact, I'd like to just wipe that out completely and do away with the confusion.
People are saying FERPA is opt-in if no response. Can it be set to yes instead of reset to null until the parent updates from the portal?
Say that one more time.
If FERPA is opt-in if no response, can it be set to yes instead of reset to null until the parent updates from the portal? So I think there needs to be clarification. So if the parent answered the FERPA questions last year at EOI, everything is wiped out. And if there is no answer, then it is assumed that they are opting in for those options. The default is opt-in. If there is an answer to it, then that's an opt-out option if that's what they choose. So hopefully that clarified it. Okay, I think we're good, Justin.
Okay. So on this screen, it's just some scheduling reminders. EC codes are excluded. Those are your AXO, AYO, AZO. We talked about the combination classes. Those must use the same expression. So with that first, second grade example, if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching a group at the same time, I've got first graders and second graders, be sure those students are assigned, those sections are assigned to the same expressions. Otherwise, they won't be considered combination, even if you apply the combination special program. And then lastly, I mean, that's as far as the expressions, the teacher, if they can't have the same expression. We see this a lot, and I think it's done just to make scheduling easier. But if they're teaching different sections at different times, they cannot have the same expression. All right, so the waiver requests, that link, I don't know if that works, but we will get, Yolanda, help me remember. Let's see. What did that take you to? We will get the waivers out. Seems like every year we have to change a date either on the waiver or the affidavit. So I'll have to check and see if that's been updated yet to display the current school year. But we'll get that out. Again, these are due by the end of November. So the reports in PowerSchool are due, and also your waiver requests and your affidavits are due at the same time. Yeah. So I think it's the affidavit that we need to update the year on. So we'll get both of those out to you. Next slide. That's your affidavits. Okay. All right. And then your signed affidavits are to be submitted to that class size email address at the bottom. Questions typically go to LaShawn, but she prefers you send them to the whole student accounting team so that in the event she's out, someone else on her team can respond. So there's both of those email addresses for you. Next slide. If you have questions about class size, if you're new, if you don't know what the heck we've been talking about, just feel free to email me. I'll point you to some documents and some historical webinars that we've recorded so that you can go through and kind of understand more what the purpose of this is and everything you need to keep in mind when you're scheduling. All right, so some items that are in the works. We've talked about the transfer records workflow. Again, that's something I hope to have out by early mid-August so that it's in place before the start of most schools. A new arts ed requirement. So there's several things that's going to take place for this. The first we've already done, and on the courses page at the very bottom where you have all the extended information, we have changed, I believe it was honors, because now that we identify honors courses through the course code itself, we really didn't need that option to check yes or no honors. So that's been changed, repurposed for arts ed. So now when you go to that page, you'll see arts ed, yes, no. What this is, it's new legislation that we have to track beginning this year, sixth graders that are entering this year. It's like an endorsement, basically. If they take one of many arts options, then they've met the endorsement. So from enterprise controller, you guys don't have to do anything, really. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and flag all of those courses once I get the final list of which arts courses count. I'm going to flag that as arts yes, so that when you have that course pulled in, it's already set to yes. You don't have to do it. And then a SQL report is going to be created and pushed out so that you can track the students that have already met this requirement. So that's going to be the beginning steps. You'll have the list of courses that's already flagged. Beginning this year, sixth graders that take that course moving forward, or any of those courses. Upon completion with the F1 stored grade, they will show up on that SQL report. The next piece that we're going to work on, which is not as important right now, but it's on our radar because this also has to be displayed on the transcript somewhere. So there's going to be some modifications to the transcript to include this. I keep calling it an endorsement. That's the best way I know to define it. But that'll also later show on the student transcripts. So we're not in as big of a hurry on that because it's going to be a couple of years before these students hit high school and have a transcript. But that's also part of the requirements. I do know, and the reason we're putting the SQL report out there, we are going to be asked at the end of every year to kind of update folks internally and legislators of the status of the completion of the arts ed requirement. So we're putting the sequel report out there so that you guys have a way to check and make sure all the students are on there that should be. But then on the back end, we're going to pull the data from the ODS and hand that over. All right, Lorenzo touched on this, the new ability to push down stored searches from Enterprise Controller. The two examples he showed was the transfer record status. We had a lot of folks early on as we were talking about the student transfer records process or records transfer process, ask if there's a way to search on those, on the status. So Lorenzo, you know, while you could do that, he found pretty simple just to push down a stored search. So those two are going to be the first. And you notice when he was showing you his screen, it said NCDPI hyphen and then whatever. We're going to be sure that any stored search that we push down has NCDPI in front so that it's not confused with any of the ones you've created. With that said, if you guys have stored searches that you've created that's very beneficial to you and your users, if you think it's something the whole state might want, I am going to ask you to send those to me, and we might, if we find it beneficial or think that other users will, we may push those out so that everyone in the state can have access to those. Something else while I'm talking about that, Corey, some conversations I've had over the past couple of days, the Canvas course that we've created, I've been asked if we could put like a Dropbox or something in there so that users can share reports, SQL reports, stored searches. Is that something we could easily do?
Yeah, we could put a discussion board thread in there on the homepage, and we can set it so they can create their own thread. So yeah, that's no problem at all.
Okay. All right. The next item, course data requirements coming soon for FTE reporting. I talked about this a little bit with you, but there are going to be some fields that are going to be required moving forward. Basically, this is around tracking courses that are being taken outside of your school. So like NCVPS or community college courses, we're now being asked to track the FTE of, you know, how much is being taken in your building compared to outside third-party providers. So with that said, I've put just a few examples. I've got a list what I know is going to be required, but that list is not final, and there could be other things added to it. So the institution code, third-party provider, the how taken, those are just a few examples of what I know we're going to require moving forward. However, we're looking at making some changes and combining some of those drop downs, the items in the drop downs. So don't worry right now about doing it, because like I said, we may make changes, and I hate to ask you to go out there and go ahead and populate these now and then us change it up on you. I'm hoping within the next 2 weeks we have a final list of what's going to be required so that we can get that out. Now I say that the data is going to be pulled at the end of October. So by the end of October, all of your sections and courses have to have the required fields populated. So I'm going to try to get that out in the next 2 weeks so that you have time to get that cleaned up. And along the same lines, while we're in there, we've identified several of the fields that are really not needed. An example, I think there was a field that was just called middle school. Yes, no. It's just old stuff that we need to clean up. So we know that that information is not being pulled by anybody at DPI. We've kind of reviewed how you guys are using it now, and honestly, it looks like you're not. And the reason that information is still populated is simply because you've been copying sections over and over and over the years. So some things that are in there now they go back all the way to 2015. So we know that's just basically junk. So look for changes to come on that page as well, the section attributes as well as the course attributes. Any questions?
We do have a question about using the teacher's name in PowerSchool. Do they need to use the teacher's legal name that is on the license, or can we use the name from payroll? Oh, sorry. Can we use the teacher's name as it is on the license, or can we use the legal name from payroll
Use it for what?
in PowerSchool? When they enter teachers in PowerSchool, do they still have to use the teacher's name as it is on the license?
That's a good question.
As
Matthew?
far as I know, nothing has changed with that. You're still supposed to use the teacher's name as it is on their license.
Yeah, I've not heard of any changes. Other questions?
All of our courses, or just the courses that are taken off-site?
For that last bullet? Yeah, it's going to be
Yes.
all.
Our payroll uses the same as the license document states. Somebody was just making a comment on the question about the teacher's name.
That it?
Someone's asking for a new QRD for sections. That's out there and it has the attributes on it too. I think John and I worked on that last year. And
Yeah,
if there's updates to it, we'll update that same QRD. So just make sure you bookmark it, not download it. But that QRD will be updated if we have updates to those fields, and we'll communicate it out.
all right, next slide. All right, looks like we're getting towards the end. So I shared with you guys that we wanted to start the regional coffee chats this school year. So what I'm proposing, I kind of switched it up. I was going to do, I think, every other week, which means that I would only meet with the whole group. Like the original plan, I would only be meeting with you every month. But
Justin, you're breaking up.
and that's my hot spot. I have good signal in this room. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I've switched it up after thinking about it. I'd like to meet with everybody at least once a month. And I also want your feedback outside of the regional coffee chats. If there's other ways, like past couple of days, I've just been on the road visiting districts, and I found that to be beneficial because, you know, everybody's got different issues that they're working through, and it's not always the same for everybody. So I don't know if there's other opportunities that you think would be beneficial as far as connecting with you guys in a smaller group to where it's more one-on-one. Just drop those in the chat or shoot me an email. But what I want to do is I want to meet with, and I'll set these invitations up and get them out. Region 1 and 8 will be the first Wednesday of every month. 2 and 7 will be the second Wednesday. 3 and 6 will be the third Wednesday, and then Region 4 and 5 will be the fourth Wednesday of every month. I may switch it up and maybe talk to some PSUs. I know there's some regions that have little groups that get together on your own. And if that's something you want to invite me to, please feel free to. I'd love to come out, but we'll see how these go, and we may try to have some face-to-face options moving forward. But this is the schedule for now, and I'll get the invitations out. I'd prefer to keep this to PowerSchool coordinators only. Well, as a matter of fact, the invitation is only to PowerSchool coordinators. So please don't share the invitation out with others. And then our fall conference is going to be the next networking opportunity we have. I think Matthew is shooting for October. I don't know if anything's been finalized yet. But the big thing is we need presenters. We can't afford to hire PSUG to come in. And, really PowerSchool, we wouldn't be able to afford to bring in as many trainers as we need. So the last time that we put this out, we got 0 proposals from you guys. So I really need some coordinators to step up, and when we put that back out, the request for proposals, even if it's only one section or session you can offer, we definitely need volunteers. Matthew, anything you want to add there?
No, we are finalizing everything now. Hopefully by next week to have more information to share out with that.
Okay. Yeah, we initially said November was going to be when we held this. But I think we've found another option, and October's looking better. Any questions or comments? All right, next slide.
Do we have potential dates?
That's a Matthew question.
Say it again, Justin.
Potential dates for the CIS conference?
Yeah, it's the third week in October. There's an AIM conference, and so we're trying to get rooms separate from AIM conference to be able to save money and hopefully keep the cost at free or either very, very, low cost. And so we're trying to get that straight now. So hopefully, I think by next Wednesday, we'll be able to go ahead and release that date and say where we're going and what we're going to be able to get accomplished. But please be thinking about sessions that can be presented because we want to hear from the field. We want the field to lead this.
Will it be virtual or face-to-face or both? We're doing face-to-face, right?
Yes, this will be a face-to-face event. And the location will be Raleigh.
All right, that is all the information I have to share for now. So if there's questions that we skipped over, we can circle back to those now, or if you have other questions you want to ask, feel free to continue.
We have a request. Can we please remind users to enter reading retained labels in transfer info for those still non-proficient? We're transferring records now, and if the data is missing from previous PSU, it will be missing on our end, which means the non-proficient students won't be in Amplify as they should. It's a good reminder.
Yeah. We probably need to get that out as a standalone and then put it in the bulletin as well.
And to go along with that, we do have another request. Would you ask if members are willing or interested in populating how each school receives records request in the notes of each registrar field in PSU under schools and school info?
Say that one more time.
They're asking if schools would be willing to populate how they receive record requests in the notes of each registrar field in PowerSchool. It's on the PSU office level under school info. If you click on the school and you scroll down, the registrar info is there. I guess it's just a helpful thing to populate how schools receive the records request in there, in that notes.
Oh, I
field.
got you. Okay.
Justin, there's a lot of comments on GDV issues. Are you aware of those?
All right. So yesterday I was made aware of, let me see, I wrote it down. Issues around last year's summer grads not being moved to the graduated students school. Are you seeing others in the comments? That's something I took back. I was going to get with PowerSchool on.
Let me scroll back up. Students that were 2021 grads are showing as a fatal error on the 21-22 GDV. And others say they have that same issue with the fatal errors. I assume PowerSchool tickets have been put in, so we probably need to pull those
Yep.
and look at what all the issues are.
Yeah, I'll get with Jan with support, and we'll pull all the GDV tickets. Right now, we've been focusing on the GDV errors from last year, because now that we're no longer able to run the previous year reports, I've been working with the accountability folks at DPI to get those. Well, other
and
ways to report those.
And we have this issue every year, and sometimes it's just minor little data errors on the student records. So usually around this time, I will start looking at the GDV tickets as well and helping PowerSchool or the PSUs with them. So we'll take a look. I am not aware of any issues where the GDV is not working properly, but I do know that a lot of times there are small little minor issues where steps weren't followed exactly as they are in the QRD, or there's one little thing missing that causes those errors. Okay, so yeah, they are saying that they have put into PowerSchool tickets, so we'll pull the tickets.
Okay.
Someone said extending the date from July to August may have caused an issue. We did this last year and the date was extended previously. So that shouldn't be causing the issue.
Yeah, that code actually, I mean, that was actually a code change and not a temporary. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was updated in the requirements moving forward.
Yeah, it was. Someone is saying if student is in graduated school but no graduation date is on transcript, where would I add the date? I think that's under the academic screen for the student. And it's pulled, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Is it diploma issued and diploma granted dates?
Yeah, those
Or
need
where
to be
it pulls
populated.
from? Those are what need to be populated. So we'll pull the tickets that are submitted to PS. You don't need to send them to us. We can pull them based on the GDV stuff and categorize them. If you haven't submitted a ticket and you have a GDV issue, go ahead and get that ticket into PowerSchool because Justin and I are going to be pulling them and looking at them. Summer school attendance and special programs, are we only to enter for the reading camp? For attendance,
What-
yes, I think so, for RTA, right? That's the only one they're entering.
What
Because
is it? Jeff?
for summer school attendance and the special programs, are we only to enter for the reading camp?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct, because the other one is going to be entered for you.
Yep. The other, that's OLR.
OLR,
Right.
thank you. I couldn't think of it. Just a note, if you're manually moving to graduated students, you also have to populate the graduated underscore school ID and graduated underscore school name, or the dates don't populate. And I think those fields are in the background. Those aren't fields that you can see, so you need to make sure those are populated. Thank you, Mark. Someone asked for me to repeat that. If you're manually moving students, graduated students to the graduated student school, you also have to populate the graduated underscore school ID and graduated underscore school name fields, or the date won't populate. Let me see if I can drop that in the chat. Copy. Okay, I just dropped that in the chat. And there's another note from Mark for those with issues with GDV. It is technically last year regular grad that happened in summer prior to 8/6. They didn't get moved just like the mid-year, so they're reporting on GDV now and really shouldn't be. They have to be moved to graduated students as they shouldn't be on this year's GDV.
Gotcha. Yep, that's what we talked about yesterday. So for right now, rather than trying to fix those, let me get with PowerSchool. I'll get with Lorenzo. I think that's part of the GDB script. You know, I shared in the beginning that the GDB script that they executed was last year's and it was incorrect. And so then we did a workaround to clean up the early grads. But it sounds like we need to address other grads as well. Well, that's good. So basically, most of our issues right now are just around GDV.
Seems like it.
As we wrap up, before you guys drop, just please be sure to click on that bit.ly at the top of this slide and give us some feedback on today's session. I know there wasn't much to share, which is a good thing. We're not currently facing a bunch of issues or new items, new requests. I'd say the biggest thing moving forward over the next couple of months is going to be those extended attributes on the section level. And I will say for now, if you want to get a head start on that, the best thing you could do for now is just clear everything out, especially if you've just been copying that old information over from year to year. Any other questions we need to address?
Someone said clear every field in extended data.
If you're not using it, I would say yes.
Justin,
Yes.
hey, this is Shelby. Tessa answered my question about the homeschool students, whether they're to look in the student accounting manual. But I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. So in there, it says we have to do homeschool students as VST1, so they don't count in ADM. But I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that because I've got school admin that want them to be able to count for ADM.
Homeschool students to count for ADM.
Yes. I
Um,
mean, they kind of got that in their mind, but I need to make sure I set them straight with that.
Yeah, the SASA manual is if it says to set them as VST1, that's how you're supposed to do it. That's the proper protocol. But that question really should be directed to financial business services.
Okay. I just needed to know where I could go for that to make sure I get the best clarification on that, to make sure I give them the correct information.
Yeah, if you'll go back to that legislative class size slide that had the student accounting email on there, if you just email that
Okay.
student accounting, yeah, somebody will answer you.
Okay. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Do the attribute handouts include directions to update these in mass? I think you're referring to the QRD. It's just the section, course and section QRD. It does not have updating in mass.
What I'll work on is I'll get a list of those field names and put together something to send out on how to clear those.
I feel like we touched on this in the past, but do we enroll students in each school or to the PSU when they're being enrolled for EC testing?
Do we enroll them where?
Students in each school or to the PSU when they're being enrolled for EC testing? Well, students should never be enrolled at the PC or at the PSU level.
Right.
So you would enroll them at the school level.
So when you're just testing a kid and they're not enrolled in one of your schools, don't you put them in the CCAS school?
Oh, for EC, yeah, you would put them in the CCAS school. Thank you, Russell.
Mhm.
If they're scheduled 50% of instructional day, how would you know they're homeschool? What's the difference between them and any other student that's only there half the day? It's a good question.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there? I would still email LaShawn.
I will go ahead and say that their student number is an indicator because their student number, if they're a homeschool student, is typically created by DPI. But if you're enrolling them and creating their school number, their student number in your instance, then I'm not sure how they're tracking that. That's not from our department. That would be from from financial business services. For students enrolled in the CCAS program school, what is the correct membership code? If you're enrolling them in the CCAS school, I believe I think you're supposed to use an N1 enrollment code. So that N1 enrollment code is ignored in all of our codes, so it doesn't really matter what the membership code is. I think you still use an MST one.
Looks like that's about it.
Yep. I don't see any more questions.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and end. Please provide the feedback as I was shared on that last slide. Look for an invitation, Region 1 and 8 for the coffee chat for next week, I guess. And then we'll get the others out. Well, we'll probably send them all out at the same time, but we're going to go ahead and kick those off next week. So looking forward to that, as well as our conference. But please, 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 if you feel comfortable offering a session or two at that conference, go ahead and let me know now if you don't care. And then also look for the email that's going to come out with the official request for proposals. All right. Thank you all. And I will talk to everyone. And if you don't have time, or if you have something going on during those coffee chats, it's not required. So hopefully you'll have time to jump in, but if not, no big deal. And we will also send out notes so that if you miss the meeting, you'll know what you missed. All right. Thank you all.